back to Parenting Unpacked. We're here with Dr. Siobhan Kennedy Costantini and Dr. Kristen Summer. Siobhan, your name is very long and I'm always worried that I'm going to stumble over it. I think I told you the other day when I was trying to send you an email that your name is long. How do you feel about your name, and how will Timo feel about his name?
Oh, this is perfectly timed question. So I'll answer the second part first. So
Yes.
Timo knows his name is Timo, obviously.
Yep.
We haven't really got into surnames. We don't talk about names. So he's just Costantini. He's got Kennedy as a second middle name.
Cool.
And but the other day, last night at dinner, he was telling everyone, "I'm Timo Costantini."
Oh,
Which is just the best. Because like I said, we don't practice or like kind of talk about our surname much. So obviously it's filtering in, and it was just the sweetest because he can't say it. Mind you, toddlers can't say most words.
No, they
so
can't.
yeah, how do I feel about my name? So great question. Hopefully it's not too long-winded, but Siobhan is my first name. It is Irish. It is Gaelic. It is not an English word, so it doesn't follow English spelling conventions.
No,
so it's spelled Siobhan. So in Gaelic, SIO makes a sh sound and BH makes a v sound. It's actually pronounced slightly differently across Ireland. So on the west coast, it's Siobhan. Elsewhere, it's Siobhan or Siobhan, or depending on the accent. So it's been my whole life. No one has ever been able to say it. In school, when a substitute teacher would come, they'd go down the roll and they'd pause and I'd just put up my hand and be like, "Yep, that's me." The name that you're struggling to figure out how you should say it, that's definitely me. I've been called all kinds of ridiculous things. But at least Kennedy, people know how to spell Kennedy. President Kennedy, people are familiar with the word.
Yes.
And then I married an Italian. And I complicated the matter. And my mother-in-law told me under no circumstances should you change your name. It's a silly idea. It's a dumb surname. It will make life more complicated. And then I decided to hyphenate to make things even more complicated. And Western bureaucracy can't handle hyphens, despite the fact that the whole of Latin America has hyphens. So yeah, it's a bureaucratic nightmare. I don't have a single piece of ID that has the same name, which considering everything's online means that I can't do online ID checks for anything. So it's hugely problematic. It sucks is the answer.
Wow.
It's of my own making. I've got the forms to just to fix it, but I haven't filled them out because I've got a small child and life is challenging enough.
So what were you going to do to fix it?
As I said, Timo's second, he has two middle names. His second middle name is Kennedy. I'm going to just try and do the same.
Oh, so you're just going to take Costantini.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe. Mind you, I haven't done the forms.
Yeah.
Well, this is true. This is what my sister and brother-in-law did. He took her name, and the kids have his middle and surnames as middle names. But there's options.
There's so many different ways to do it. I've actually never thought of giving a child the other surname as a middle name. That's one way to keep it there, but not to have to burden them with many last names.
Well, exactly. So I got that idea from my mother-in-law. So she kept her maiden name, but both my husband and my brother-in-law have her surname as their second middle name. So it's kind of a nice way to pass it down the line. But it's all chaos. Names are chaos. And no one. The thing also, different departments have different rules. Like the ATO, Australian Tax Office, I can use a hyphen with them, but the Passport Office won't let me put a hyphen in. And then there was another one Medicare, which is our Social Security. The name doesn't fit on the card, so the computer system won't recognize it. So yeah, there's just I have lots of amusing conversations with customer service representatives who don't know how to handle it, and I'm like, don't worry, neither does anyone else.
Yeah, that is frustrating. At least my name got easier. It got easier to spell when I changed it, and I only changed it because it sounded fun and nice. I don't really have any patriarchal feminism. I don't know. I don't have any political beliefs around whether women should change their names or not. I just felt like I wanted everyone to have the same last name in the family. because not having last names can present, like the same last name as your child can present some confusion. And like we saw a lot of it when we were testing little kids. We would assume that the parent, like the child's last name was the parent's last name. And then when I went to write their certificates, like I very quickly learned when I first started testing children to wait until the child got there so that the parent could actually give you their last name so you could put the right last name on the certificate, because mum's last name was about 50% of the time not the child's last name. It was very complicated for me, so I didn't want to do it that way with my kid simply because one day my kid would be in an experiment and they might get the wrong name on their certificate and it would be very confusing. But yeah, Summer ended up being
Good enough reason as any.
much easier, more memorable name, except for the fact that Dr. Summer is like a German like sex advice column, which is hilarious. And I didn't discover until I went viral on TikTok with like, I don't know, some kind of discount code, which was Dr. Summer. And they're like, wait, what? Why is there a discount code for Dr. Summer with toys, like children's toys, not sex toys? They were very confused, but whatever. So yeah, that's the only reason I changed my name. Otherwise I would have kept it if I liked my last name more. And it was simpler to like get people to spell, but Summer is far easier because you're just like, it's Summer with an O, and people are like, okay, like, and most people put the O in the right place. Because
this is the thing, I get Constantini. They add an N.
Constantini. I mean, but that's like Constantine. Is that where it comes from? Pope Constantine? Is that?
I think so.
Currently in.
I think so.
I was about to say office, but like the
no,
Pope
we've got
doesn't really have an office.
No, not Benedict. We've got
who is it?
Goodness, why? Francis. Pope Francis.
We like Francis, don't we? He's really progressive.
He's much more progressive, particularly than the last bloke.
Yes. Well, like on the topic of
mind you, progressive for the Catholic Church isn't terribly progressive.
No, it's not, but like small steps. On the topic of progressiveness, though, Siobhan, I'm moving us on. On the topic of progressiveness.
Go for it. Let's proceed.
Oh, this is one of those days where we're just too excited and we need to respond to each other. On the topic of progressiveness, thank you for not responding to that, is the progressiveness of millennial parents who are constantly being told that you shouldn't hold your baby because it will spoil them. And those millennial parents turn around and say, that's just not true. Please stop your mouth because spoiling babies is impossible and we should hold babies as much as we goddamn please. Siobhan, can you tell me the science on holding babies and why it's good for them?
Oh, I sure can. So I'm glad that this kind of rhetoric is becoming more normalized, that babies should and need to be held, because it's true. Yes. It's just factually accurate. A lot of things that come instinctively to us, such as holding our babies when they cry, comes from a really sensible place, usually from deep within our evolutionary history, because like these things are ingrained in us, and for good reason. So what Kristen is alluding to specifically here is skin-to-skin contact, which is, there's so much evidence to support it. So let's just do some hot take straight off the list benefits of what skin-to-skin. The key ones are it helps regulate your baby's temperature. So babies, particularly newborns, because they lack sweat glands, they take a while to develop. They can't regulate their own temperature very well, which is one of the reasons that in hospital babies, particularly in the first few days, you always see them with little beanies or hats on. It's because we release so much heat from our head and they can't maintain that temperature otherwise. So skin-to-skin contact, our kind of literally co-regulates them physically, helps their body stay at an appropriate temperature. It helps to stabilize their heart rate. It, particularly in the first few hours, days, and weeks of birth, helps to kind of stimulate and maintain milk supply for breastfeeding mothers, helps babies breathing. It helps babies gain weight faster in the hospital. And there's some evidence to show that it helps with bonding, but even more than that, there's evidence showing that it helps with parental confidence. So kind of what's known as self-efficacy. So parents feel more capable and confident in caring for their little ones when they hold them closer to them.
And what does a previous generation telling a mother to put their baby down do to self-efficacy and confidence, Siobhan?
It shatters it.
Mm-hmm. It really
Yeah.
does. I still have so many memories of my mum being like, I think the reason that she cries so much and you're having such a hard time with her is because you never put her down. And it just made me twitchy because I know the science, but it also broke me inside and made me second guess it. It was like, wait, what? Am I actually doing the wrong thing? Even though I'm a
Mm,
scientist and I know these things, when someone who has done this all before, who has
mm,
raised many children, who is in a like authority place above you says these things, like it is ingrained in us as humans to like take on their opinion. So when the previous generation is telling us that we're doing something wrong, it actually really does undermine our confidence. So this is us telling you that your confidence should not be undermined. You should hold your babies, maybe whip your shirt off and their shirt off in the process so that you get all that good skin to skin action. But yeah, you should hold your babies. You're not going to spoil them. You're not going to make them cry more. Um, you're not going to make them more likely to have tantrums, less likely to be independent, because what do we know from attachment about dependence, Siobhan, and independence, I should say?
Well, yeah, that I mean, like, so dependence is the nature of immaturity, and children
Mm-hmm.
factually are immature. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can't force children to be more dependent by removing your care or responsivity. All you can do is to stop them asking for help.
Yes.
You're teaching learned helplessness rather than
Yes.
rather than dependence.
Yes.
So dependence is something that comes over time with maturity. Where our society in general is always trying to rush things, including
Mm-hmm.
rush children, which part of my frustration with milestones, because
Mm-hmm.
parents get told your child should be sitting by X month or walking by X month or crawling by X month. And then
Mm-hmm.
so people get it in their heads, understandably, my child is 6 months and they're not sitting independently yet. What's wrong with
Mm-hmm.
them? And the answer is nothing. Like, there's the very rare chance that your child might have something wrong, in which case,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's definitely worth looking into options. But sitting is the normal range of sitting is anywhere from 3 to like 8, 9 months,
Mm-hmm.
which is a huge range.
Isn't it?
And like all of that is normal.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to get hung up and stressed about these things. And like I did too, even though I knew all this, exactly like you
Mm-hmm.
say, it's one thing to know it, it's another to go through it.
Yeah.
But it's exactly the same. Like, babies are designed to be held. They're expected to be held. Like, newborn children are human newborns, hugely vulnerable. So
Mm-hmm.
babies are born too early. Human babies are
Mm-hmm.
born way too early. When we look at our ape counterparts, they have much longer gestational periods than we do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's partly because in order for us to stand upright, our hips and our pelvis had to become more narrow in order to sustain our weight so that we could
Mm.
stand upright. But then as a result, that means that our hips became very narrow and our pelvises became narrow. And that meant that we couldn't hold babies to term long enough for their brains to get big enough to be mature enough. So they're born earlier than they should. They're born at a stage where their head still fits through our narrow pelvis, which means that they're born younger and less mature than they otherwise would in an ideal world. And then this is where like the idea of the fourth trimester comes, that there's all of this development, really, really
Mm-hmm.
important development that happens in the 2 to 3 months following birth, which is why in an ideal world, and what also happens in so many traditional communities around the world, is that you literally just see a baby strapped to a mother in a
Mm-hmm.
carrier or a sling, that they are always on them.
Yeah.
And the way they solve it is they make their hands available by using a tool. That's one of like the main things that separates humans from animals. We use
Mm.
tools. So
Yes.
we find ways around with objects, such as carriers and slings. And
Yeah.
like, one of the reasons carriers are so great in the research is that, similar to parental confidence, when your
Mm-hmm.
baby is close to you, you can read their cues better.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
there's less um, delay in hearing and then responding to their cues. So
Mm-hmm.
there's so much evidence behind having your baby physically close to you.
Exactly. So, like, skin to skin or just holding your baby is never anything but a good thing, because from dependence breeds independence. We know that the more the child can depend on you, the more likely they are to develop a secure attachment, which we know from the science breeds a healthier, happier child and adult. Secure attachments are what we are striving for in parenthood and adulthood. So yeah, holding that baby helps reinforce that, but it doesn't mean that you have to hold the baby if you don't want to. That baby
Mm.
can be put down. That is also okay,
Hmm.
because what we know from attachment is that 40 to 50% responsiveness is okay. You don't have to respond all the time, and they will still develop a great attachment. And there are other people who can hold that baby as well. And I love the fact
Mm.
that at the moment, like in hospitals, they've really got this push towards dads doing skin to skin immediately. Like as soon as that baby is born and like mum is ready to like hand the baby over for a minute for a shower, because we all need a shower after birth. Um, Dad whips his shirt off and the baby gets placed on his chest, cuddled up under a blanket, like skin to skin. And dad gets to do the skin to skin, and it also has effects for dad. Do you have any of the science on what skin to skin does for dads and mums?
Well, so there is like I don't have the numbers off the
Mm.
top of my head, but the same kind of parental efficacy and bonding happens. There is some research about how after birth, dad's testosterone levels really
Mm-hmm.
drop,
Yes.
and I imagine that would be more like that. My guess would be that would be correlated with increased skin to skin because of the hormones
Yeah.
are more able to be like transferred across. There's
Yeah.
greater what's the word? It's easier when things are close and happening quickly. Um,
Exactly.
but I think like that's such an excellent point in that hospitals are starting to embrace this even more and more.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in Australia, it's happened this way for quite a while. In the States, it's becoming more the norm for sure.
Yeah.
Interestingly, did you know the origin of like so as we talk about like historically and evolutionarily, this has been a
Mm-hmm.
thing that if you think about like cave times, that I know we don't like to talk about caveman times, but if we think about caveman times, this is how things would have happened.
uh,
Um, but that like in terms of like modern medicine and like a
mm-hmm.
medicalized birth, do you know the background of skin to skin?
No, I don't. I have no idea about the background
It's
for
really
skin to
cool.
skin. Okay.
So it's really, really cool. So in it's kind of really kicked off in oh goodness, where have I got it? You're going to
Oh.
have to pause me for 2 seconds. Colombia. Here you go. So it kicked off in the 70s in Colombia. So
Yep.
basically, what happened was that in hospitals in Colombia in like kind of late 60s, early 70s, they didn't have them, like the hospitals were very poor. They didn't have the money to pay for the incubators for preemie babies. And so preemie babies were dying
Mm.
at like really high rates. And what the midwives in the hospitals did is that they decided to, oh, they
Oh, I know
noticed that
what
the
this is
babies,
called. Kangaroo
yeah,
Care.
kangaroo care,
Oh, okay.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So they noticed that the babies that they hugged and cuddled did better, that they had better,
Oh.
like I said, all of those great things before, they had better heart rates, they had better breathing. Their body temperature regulated faster, all these kinds of things. And to
Mm-hmm.
begin with, it was just something they noticed that of the ones that they cuddled, they tended to do better.
Oh.
And then, so what they started to do, because they couldn't afford these machines to like look after these babies, is they just made it standard practice to do skin to skin or kangaroo care with preemie babies. And then
Mm.
they like started to get like ridiculous success rates, that like the preemie babies are just doing so well, even compared to places that had the incubators. So like they did much, much better than comparable hospitals in the States. So it started to kind of spread all throughout the 80s and 90s that this is kind of how we should do things. And now, actually, the hospital that Timo was born at, I think things have slowed down because of COVID. But prior to COVID, they had volunteers that were cuddle mums
Oh.
and cuddle dads.
Oh my
So
goodness.
usually they're just kind of older men and women who maybe had time off in retirement to volunteer. They would come up to the hospital and cuddle babies, and they would
Wow.
volunteer to cuddle. Because either the mum and dads, the babies were in like the NICU or special unit, and either had to go home to get something. And so to free up the time for the nurses and the midwives who obviously had other things to be doing, they just cuddle babies, which is the best. And obviously, I remember as a PhD student studying babies, I tried to get on the wait list to become a cuddle volunteer, but the list was so long, and I
Really?
didn't.
Wow.
Yeah, everyone wants to cuddle. I mean, who doesn't want to cuddle a baby?
This is a good point, especially a teeny tiny baby.
Yeah, and especially one that you're not like responsible for. You don't have to go home
Mm,
and have a sleepless night. You just cuddle a baby and go home and get a full night's rest. That sounds great.
excellent point. Oh,
Yes.
that's so sweet.
But yeah, so now
Yeah.
it's kind of standard practice in hospitals all around the world.
Yeah. Like dad can mostly stay. Dad gets to cuddle skin to skin, and we know that's really good for bonding and things because the male brain's quite complicated when it comes to having a child.
Hmm.
I actually read some other stuff about the dad's brain and how it changes because it's not just testosterone. So we know that like when a dad hears or when a man hears a baby cry, at first testosterone lowers, but then if they cry for too long, their testosterone raises because they go into like fight or flight mode, like the baby's attracting too much noise, whatever. But also, research finds that once men become dads, they have greater activation in like the neural networks related to mentalizing,
Mm.
which is like reading social cues and understanding others' mental states. Like, hi, that's something we all really need. We need social cues to be able to read our babies. Um, and what they actually found in one really big study was that parenthood has neuroprotective effects. Dads'
Hmm.
brains are almost a whole year younger looking than
Mm.
men who aren't fathers. And that was a study over like 300,000 people in the UK, which is just bonkers. That's such a big study for like
That's huge.
a brain study. Yeah, so like dad's brains change in so many different ways, and like in order to like facilitate that change, like things like skin to skin are really important because you like your body responds to it, your pheromones or whatever it is, the smell of the baby, the touch of the baby, all of these things are super important. So it's important for mum obviously because it helps with breastfeeding and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, it helps for dad too, which is really cool.
And like, I think one place where you can, I would love to encourage people to embrace this more,
Mm.
is that so contact naps are a really common thing for young children to do. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
thing that a lot of parents really struggle with,
Yeah.
understandably, because
Mm.
sometimes we just need physical distance from our
Yes.
little ones.
Yes, we do.
But sometimes, and something I definitely did to try and help me reframe contact naps is not something that it should be annoying and awful,
Mm.
but to use them as opportunities for skin to skin. So
Yeah.
my baby was asleep, mind you, my little one was also born in summer.
Yes.
But
So
I would
sweaty.
take my, yeah, exactly, take my shirt off. He wouldn't be wearing a shirt, and we'd both just kind of lightly doze. Well, no, he'd sleep and I'd lightly doze, and
Mm.
use that as like restorative time and skin to skin.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting that I mean, talk about the neuroprotective factors of fatherhood, because
Mm.
we know that this is totally the case for mothers as well. I found
Mm-hmm.
this study, so there's two studies I want to share with you that I think are
Mm-hmm.
fascinating. There was this
Mm-hmm.
study by Barbara Muller and colleagues in 2019 that found that they could predict with 92% accuracy. They
Wow.
looked at a mum and a non-mum's brain scan. They
Mm-hmm.
could predict with 92% accuracy who was the mother of those two, because
Wow.
it changes the physical structure of your brain such that it's that clear.
Yeah, I feel
Isn't that
that.
insane?
I can feel every single structural change over the last 2.5 years. So I am not
Absolutely.
surprised. Um,
No, and
yeah,
like you
that's
say,
really
it was
cool.
mostly in these social regions of the brain. So you're talking about
Yeah.
how it improves father's mentalization. For mums, it was, yeah, the areas that are associated with theory of mind and perspective taking.
Yeah. Wow. That's really cool. I mean, theory of mind is definitely reading social cues and things like that. So
Hmm.
that makes sense. What else do we want to say about skin to skin? Oh, on the topic of contact napping, because that's what my kid always did, like
Hmm.
forever. It was exhausting. To give me a break, my husband, because it was the middle of COVID lockdowns and we were both working from home, which
Mm.
is its own kind of hell when you have a baby at home, you're both working and it's just no one can leave the house except for a daily walk. What he would do to give me a break and a chance to actually work, because she wouldn't let me work when she was awake, which whatever, is he would strap her in the carrier and he would take her for a walk. And it's the only way he's ever really been able to put her to sleep. He's getting better now with like middle of the night wake ups, but like, yeah, only way he was ever really able to put her to sleep other than me breastfeeding her. So yeah, like that, just that bodily contact, even if it's not skin to skin, is still super calming, especially like when you have the rhythmic motion of walking at the same time. Yeah, it's so good for everyone, really, not just the baby.
Yeah, and I talk about this with the parents in my sensory classes, is that babies are sensory beings. They experience the world through their senses. I mean, obviously as adults we do as well, but we have the kind of this mediating factor of language, which helps us kind of process our thoughts and process our experiences through this extra lens that children just don't have. So, and there's also research from Alison Gopnik, who we talked about as our academic godmother, talks about how little ones, so when we think about anything, so I'm looking at my room right now, I can scan and focus on the plant that's over there, the pile of unfolded washing. Like I can focus on individual things. Children, particularly, definitely infants, they can't focus their attention in that way. They just get an onslaught of everything. And that means that, so not only is that highly like sensorily stimulating, it also means that they often find comfort in the familiar senses. So if you think about it, they've been inside for 9 months. They've had this really loud heart. They can hear your heartbeat because they're so close to your digestion. They can hear all your gurgly noises of your stomach. They can feel the warmth of what that feels like inside. So by comparison, a cot that is cold and dark and or even if you have the lights on bright and like has no sound, like these things are foreign and unfamiliar and unpleasant, whereas by comparison, being close to you, they can hear your heartbeat, they can feel and smell you. So it's a lot of it's about familiarity and that like craving that comfort.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think that is a good part to stop with Skin to Skin, Siobhan. To finish off our episode, what is your mind-numbing media recommendation to veg out to?
Well, I have just watched, actually, I'm about 20 minutes from the end, and it was mind-numbing because it wasn't great. Like it was good, but I think I've been spoiled by binge content. Oh, actually, I've got two. I've been spoiled by binge content where I just am not good at like proper drama that like draws things out. It's like, hurry up, get to it.
Yeah.
Which is where the skip forward 10 seconds button is helpful.
Oh, wow. You're really
I know.
adamant on that.
Yeah, I know it. I'm like, come on, yes, I get it. Long staring glances, get to the action, which is bad. Anyway, so I've watched this show called Pieces of Her, which is all about a mother and an adult daughter and witness protection and living a life that's a lie and a strange family. And yeah, so it has been heavy. That's also probably why I'm skipping ahead to get past the heavy tension. Anyway, so that's the heavy thing, but the super mind-numbing thing I've watched. Have you seen this? It's called Ultimatum, Marry or Move On.
What?
It's so shit. It's so bad. It's on Netflix.
It would be.
It's terrible. Basically, there's these like women, not all, there's some men do it, but in their like mid to late 20s who are with their boyfriend and they sign up for this reality show with the ultimatum of, at the end of these 3 weeks, either you marry me or we break up.
Holy.
So I think there were 10 or 12 couples. 3 of the guys issued the ultimatum and the rest were the girls issued the ultimatum. Unsurprisingly, they weren't the healthiest of relationships, some of them.
Get out of town, never.
I know.
Oh my God.
Anyway, it's total trash. I wouldn't say I recommend it, but it was entertaining.
Yeah. It's one of those put it on while you're doing something else kind of like TV shows, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Fold the washing whilst listening to nonsense people doing nonsense things.
They're my favorite kind.
I know. I love it. I get so much washing folded.
Oh, honestly. I am currently reading the, what's it called? Why can't I not remember what it's called? Zodiac Academy. It's garbage.
Oh, okay.
It's not even good writing. Like, and I read every single word. If I flick the page too soon because I haven't read the last word on the previous page, I will go back and read the last word And like, I'm so specific.
My sister reads like that.
It's really slow, which is surprising that I've read so many books this year when it's a really slow way to read. It's just who I am. I don't know. My brain works like that. So like, I spot all the typos, and this book has a lot of typos, and it's just terrible. Like, the premise is terrible. It's all garbage. But I am on book 4, and I've probably
how many are there left?
There's 3 more. There's 7 books, I think.
Good.
And then I think there's like spin-offs of them, so clearly like they're good garbage. But yeah, so before that I read the whole like Bridgerton series, and it really tweaked me. Have you read Bridgerton?
I haven't read it. I've watched both seasons. I think I finished it in like 2 or 3 days. It's total trash. I love it.
No, it's really beautifully done. Like, I wouldn't call Bridgerton trash.
Wait, do you mean the show or the book?
The show.
Oh, but it's terrible.
But there's so much production like effort that goes into it.
Sorry.
And the songs are amazing.
It's high quality trash. I think so. I came from a household that really embraced period dramas. Like, once a year we would watch the 5-part miniseries of the 1995 Pride and Prejudice. Like, I know it by heart.
I've never seen it ever.
It's brilliant.
Okay.
With the Colin Firth. Anyway, there's so many references in Bridgerton to that series.
Is there really?
Anyway.
Okay.
Yes.
Like the Regency
it's littered
era.
with. Yeah, but also like the Bridgerton, there's lots of throwbacks to that filming, like little nods to it.
Okay.
I mean,
sure.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't. Anyway,
Anyways.
I love it. So I have, and Jane Austen, I've read Jane Austen all as a teenager.
Never have.
Yeah. So that's the comparison. Bridgerton is different. It's its own thing.
Yeah.
So like they're different things. So it's not fair
culture
to compare them.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's pop culture versus high literary art.
Yes. Yeah, sure.
But they're both great. I love them.
No, Bridgerton is smart. Like, it is like sex scenes like on tap. But like, the thing is, Bridgerton season 1, so Daphne and Simon, was like very, very true to the book. Bridgerton season 2, not at all true to the book.
Crazy.
Very, 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 very different. The whole time I'm watching it, I'm like, that's not what happened. Like, this isn't. I know what's going to happen, and now I don't know, because what happened in the book is that when the bee stung Kate, like in Bridgerton, that is when they got caught, and Anthony got forced to marry her. Like, and then
so it's kind of a repeat of season 1.
Yeah, so like, there was never any of this like discomfort between Kate and her sister. Edwina wasn't at all interested in Anthony at any point. The bee sting happened really early in the book. They like begrudgingly got married. Neither of them were interested in each other. They were married and they never had sex. And he'd go to like, I don't know, like a saloon or a bar every day with his brothers to like avoid seeing Kate. And then like the whole book is focused on them falling in love after marriage.
After they've been married.
Not before. So there's so much more drama in season 2 Bridgerton than like what you expect. And like the queen is like just non-existent in the books. Like, there is no role of the queen. But yeah, I read the books because like I got really into like there's at the end of the books, there's like a flash forward to their life like 20 years later or something. Like, it's an extra chapter. So you get to see how their lives turned out and all their kids and things like that. It's really cute. But yeah, I was so like agitated with season 2 of Bridgerton.
The whole season,
it was so
watching it.
different because how early did the bee sting happen? It happened so early. It just wound me up so much.
You're supposed to be married.
Oh, it's like, when do you fall in love? Why? How far are you going to let this get with Edwina? This is not okay. This is not accurate. Anyways,
stop leading my Edwina.
Because I don't even remember who she ended up with, but yeah, it was definitely different. So I'm curious what happens with the other seasons, and like, we don't find out who Lady Whistledown is until much, much later. In the books. Much later. We found out in the end of season 1. Yeah, like that's a whole different storyline that doesn't usually exist. Nor did the like whole drama with the Featherington family, like that didn't exist, as if I recall. Yeah. So anyways, like, The Bridgerton books are also really good, and they're different from the series, so you don't have anything to worry about. They won't cross over.
Need it.
It's different content. It's just a lot of smut. You know how sometimes there's books where like they allude to the sex occurring? These books are not those. These books are describing it in painful detail.
50 Shades of Grey for the Regency era.
I never read 50 Shades of Grey. Actually, that's not true. I started reading 50 Shades of Grey and got to a point where I was like, this is about to be crazy, and stopped turning the page. Like, now I just read garbage smut. And it is hilarious. Anyways, that's my mind-numbing media recommendations. I have books because that's all I've been reading. Hence, I'm pretty sure I've read 3 books in a little over a week, because my child has been demanding that I lie in bed with her a lot. So I read my Kindle while that occurs.
Perfect.
So yeah, that is
win-win.
Yeah, that's fun. It's not that fun. Not really. I'd rather have some time to myself, but that's fine. I'll have time to myself again in 10 years, maybe. Anyways,
in a few decades at least.
Yeah. Anything else from you, Siobhan?
No, that's me.
Oh.
Well, thank you for joining us, everyone.
Alrighty. Well, yes. We will catch you in the next one. Bye.
See ya. Bye.